Hello, my name is Alex Wilson, and I am a character designer for Season 2 of Invincible. Well, there's two main branches to character design. There's your model sheets, which is basically a schematic, it's a blueprint, and the key there is being super consistent with shapes and proportion across the multiple views that you'll draw of a character. And then the other half of character design is the fun stuff. Main characters will get a set of action poses and expressions, which will show how special moments when the characters are doing a particular sequence of acting or fighting, you can then say, okay, this is going to be difficult for animation, so we'll take this moment and we'll do a specific tied down drawing showing how Alan the alien looks with his eyeball floating out of his head, or, you know, a group of alien civilians being turned into Inside Out alien civilians. Yeah, that episode in particular with the Lizard League fighting Rexplode and Duplicate and Shrinking Ray was actually very fun. It's such a visceral, disgusting scene. Again, that was a lot of work and a lot of back and forth with Sean to get that looking right. And I'm just so happy that it grossed people out. It's nice that it had such a universal reaction from so many people pulling up that moment in particular. It's the same like my favorite special pose drawn by anyone in the show so far is actually by Jonathan, and it's the two duplicates being smashed together. And the way I described it was if you can hear an image before it's animated, it's probably going to be good. That whole sequence was just grim because it's the first time that these characters have really felt like they're in like permanent mortal peril. It was just brilliant to be able to kind of add the capstone with those to that story beat with those particularly gratuitous drawings. You get desensitized pretty quickly. It started out pretty gross, but then you start just looking at it as a challenge for how to get detailed shapes that don't require a gargantuan amount of detail that are going to make them impossible to animate. Again, it's another team effort, keying off the rest of the design team. Everyone comes up with some wonderful solutions for how intestines look, and then you kind of take that and maybe someone comes up with a really good way of handling an exposed chest cavity and the thickness of the flesh and stuff like that. If anything, I think the gore is looking better the more we do, because people have thought of novel and unique ways to kind of make something look really compelling without having to be super medically accurate. It becomes less about what it actually is and more about how to convey impact and movement in a fun and efficient way. I am worried for my next employer, if they have to do a background check, they're gonna be like, oh yeah, this guy's trouble.
Okay, that's just... Is that really what I look like?
If you think that's weird.
Look out, evil! We're...
Working on a series that I was a fan of before getting to work on it is a deeply unusual experience. It's kind of hard to articulate, at least for me, because you can't get overly precious about a show that you're working on as a fan, because at the end of the day, we're professionals and we need to just do the work and be as proficient and proactive as possible as just doing our job. And every once in a while, you have like a little moment, you're like, hang on a second, before I went to school to even start learning how to do this, I was reading this comic. It's just hard to nail down. It's a hard feeling to really put into words. So I'm already super familiar with the story, so I more get excited for like Rex has a bit of a redemption arc from being something of an arsehole in the first season. From that point of view, it's actually quite fun to get to kind of like knowing what's coming next, getting to work on these moments kind of makes it more compelling from the design point of view, because you can make it look particularly gnarly and horrible knowing that these characters will get an opportunity to perhaps overcome it later. Again, because it's such a well-established universe, and getting to kind of do a slight take on something that has become iconic. So approaching new characters on Invincible's an interesting one, because there's obviously such a well-established source material. The vast majority of what we're going to end up designing is adapting what was in the comics, so making it consistent and approachable for the animation team to actually work with. There aren't a ton of enormously brand new characters. They are, even our incidentals, we try to cherry pick from the comics and find designs that were interesting, that maybe a little hideaways for fans that enjoy both the comic and the animation. But in general, what we're looking at is just trying to make something that is fun and engaging, but also simple enough to be animated easily and not distract from the main lineup of characters. The design challenges of Angstrom was that brain. I'm having flashbacks. Angstrom is a very difficult character to turn because he has a lot of detail and an unusual shaped cranium at the back of his head after his horrific injury. So we just bash out a ton of different designs, more than we need, and pick the fun ones. But he's a fun character, so it's worth it in the end. But yeah, anything with lots of intricate detail, it's always going to be difficult to translate to a good design sheet.
Mark Grayson, Invincible. Come with me now, or this woman dies. Did you hear me?
Mark?
Whoa, hey. Who are you?
My name is Anissa, and I'm an agent of the Viltrum Empire.
Again, having a favorite character in a show like Invincible is quite difficult, because I think there's a lot of very strong characters in the show. I like Omni-Man's arc. The Viltrums in general were always, I can't say too much because of what's coming down the pike, but their story is quite compelling, especially as you learn more truths about who they are as a people and who they have been and where they've come from and where they go. But even characters like, I'm a big fan of Alan the Alien. He starts off as kind of like a comic relief character and then becomes a much more major player in the universe further down the line. And again, just working on the show and the characters in general, it just feels like a particularly fun thing to be able to do. They're so well established, like the main character designs, we try and stay as faithful as possible. It's everything in character design is a massive collaborative effort. Obviously, with everyone from Mark to Omni-Man to Alan the Alien, we want to keep them as close to the source material as we possibly can. And it's usually just a process of abstraction. So you're trying to make complicated anatomy look and read as quickly as possible, and have the volumes be consistent, have the costumes look exactly how you thought they would look while moving, without just filling the design with tons of detail and lines that would make it a nightmare to track an animation. And that involves just a lot of back and forth, a lot of work. Season 2 art director was Sean. He is extraordinarily good at keeping the details that we need to keep the characters true to form, while also being able to pull off what the storyboard team wants to achieve with their very ambitious combat sequences. So the giant monsters and beasts are definitely characters. Most of the work I do on monsters and any big forms are things like damage states. In animation, when you have a fight sequence, you need to do a design for every single change that happens on the character. So if there's a long protracted fight, you need to submit a new turn for every single step of damage that occurs. So if someone's costume rips on the shoulder and then later on rips across the torso, or they get one cut and then they lose an arm later, that all requires a new pass and a new turn. So that happens a lot with the monsters. The last one I did was, I'm not sure if I can say it. So I handled all the injuries done to that model and tracked those. Whenever we talk about special poses and character design, you also have to look at the entire story team and what they're bringing. We're just refining their acting beats, getting them on model and pushing them to the the best we can within the limits of TV animation. And so it's not just like the inspiration that I will take from Ryan Ottley's work on the original comic run. He did some really graphic violence in the panels that just took it from being a loving kind of like nod to some Silver Age comics to this is something entirely different and kind of shocking at the time, especially, which is not easy to achieve. So I might key off that, but someone on the story team might be looking at animation from something like The Last Man or any one of the fantastic Japanese sequences done in any number of animated projects coming out of mainly Japan, but Asia in general. And so all of that kind of coalesced into the final product because everyone gets to impart their little bit of inspiration and what they do with it during their stage of the pipeline. And then by the time it gets to us, we're just kind of, at least in special poses, refining what was laid down beforehand. So that Komodo Dragon pose started with the original story, and then I took a sketch of Dan's panel and put it on model and kind of said, this is what I would do with this. And then Sean took a pass over that and was like, okay, let's just get your anatomy right. And then I went back and refined that idea and did the final clean. So the inspiration comes from everyone along the way. There's also something really personal about like most of these fights of people getting punched through buildings or flying through trains. Him just grabbing someone, eating them, and then saying yum afterwards is makes it feel a lot more personal, like you mentioned.
Yum.
So I'm just very happy that people are watching the show and excited to see everyone's reactions, and I hope they're looking forward to more.